Hi, everyone. So happy to have you join us. I'm Helen Rosenfeld. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Science and Engineering Fair. And it is my pleasure to introduce you today to Dr. Sarah Fankhauser, who will share information about the Journal of Emerging Investigators. And with that, I'm just going to hand it right over to you, Sarah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And really thank you for the opportunity to present to everyone today. I have to start off with the obligatory, can everyone see my screen question? Okay, awesome, thank you. So my name is Sarah Fankhauser. I'm one of the founders and the current board chair of the Journal of Emerging Investigators, and I'm also an assistant professor of biology at Oxford College of Emory University. And also today I have two of my amazing colleagues who are part of JEI as well, Dr. Olivia Hoshing and Dr. Yamin Lee, who are both part of JEI as well, and could actually help answer questions as well at the end. So thank you all for joining us. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what JEI, or the Journal of Emerging Investigators, is, and how you might consider taking your science fair projects, if that's what you're working on right now, and publishing them for a very broad and wide audience. Okay, we're going to see if this video works. So I have a short 2-minute video, and about 50% of the time it doesn't work, but we'll see.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a professional scientist? If you've conducted a science experiment at home or in school, you're halfway there. Professional scientists share their discoveries with the world by publishing scientific articles. Scientists inform the public and help other scientists generate new ideas. At the Journal of Emerging Investigators, we use scientific publication to train the next generation. JEI matches high school students with PhD level mentors at top research universities who guide students through all steps of publication, no matter the STEM discipline or level of. Have you ever wanted new ideas? At the Journal of Emerging Investigators, we use scientific publication to train the next generation of scientists. JEI matches middle and high school students with PhD level mentors at top research universities who guide students through all steps of publication, no matter the STEM discipline or level of sophistication. Best yet, JEI is entirely free. To get started, first use our submission guides to format your science fair or research data into a professional style manuscript. After submitting your paper through the submission portal, we'll send you detailed scientific feedback from 4 professional researchers in your field, presented and explained by your assigned editor mentor. Next, our mentors will work with you to think critically about your science and refine your scientific writing style. We'll instruct you in the use of proven, effective ways to describe your data with text, tables, and figures. Finally, we'll format your manuscript into a professional proof to publish in JEI's print issues and online, where it'll be read by hundreds of scientists worldwide. The next generation of researchers needs authentic mentorship to unleash their creativity and push forward scientific frontiers. Submit to JEI to accelerate your science, connect with a community of encouraging scientists, and share your research with the world.
So that was kind of the all-encompassing short blurb as to what JEI is, and why you might want to consider publishing your scientific research. But the next few slides are really about the why. And why, as scientists, we think that a science journal for middle school and high school students can provide such a valuable experience for students. So I want to start off by looking at how scientists spend their time. So typically when we think of a scientist, we think of them in the lab or in the field doing an experiment. However, in 2004, a well-known study looked at how scientists and engineers spend their time. And they found that actually scientists and engineers spend 60% of their time just reading, writing, and communicating their science. So scientists are spending more time outside of the lab doing these things and communicating their work. And these skills are so important to their ability to actually do science and construct scientific knowledge. And we think, and if we think about just how scientists are doing science, we get an even more in-depth picture of all the things that scientists must do in this right-hand graphic. So this image comes out of Berkeley, and it depicts the scientific process embodied by the work of a scientist. And we can see that some parts of the science are exactly as we would really expect. They are gathering and interpreting data, for example. And so perhaps the students on this call or who watch this later are already doing this part. So maybe you're actually doing your research right now. Other parts are perhaps less familiar or that we tend to maybe overlook. For example, scientists regularly communicate their science with other scientists. And one way that you might be doing this for the students that are on the call or the teachers is through oral presentations like science fair. And other ways that scientists share their work is through publication. And they engage with other scientists through peer review. And they read about the science as a way of finding inspiration or to make observations. And all of this participation in reading and writing helps scientists inform the way that they do their own experiments and contribute to our collective knowledge. And so if we begin to look at reading and writing, we see just how important it is to scientists being able to do science, just like you're doing. So scientists read to develop new ideas, they read to develop their hypotheses, to learn or refine their methods, to interpret their results, and even to understand the impact of their results. And ultimately, when we as scientists share our work with others, we're just going to continue this cycle of scientific knowledge building. And so that's really where the Journal of Emerging Investigators, or JEI, comes in. It's an online, free, peer-reviewed science journal dedicated to mentoring and publishing the research specifically for middle and high school students. So normally when we're thinking about professional scientific publication, we're thinking, well, that's just not for me, that's too high level or boring, and I agree with that. But this journal is really meant specifically for middle school and high school students. So the research is performed by students, it's written by students, and it's meant to be read by students. And so in the next few slides, I want to take you through the JEI process and the resources that are available to student scientists and their teachers to help them turn into any research project they're doing into a potentially publishable paper. So our flagship program is our journal. It's all online, and our mission is really to support students in publishing their research. We provide a lot of guidance for students and their teachers or research mentors to help them through this process. So for example, if you were to go to our website, you would see this on our homepage. And if you look under the Submit tab of our website, you can find information on what content should go into a paper, who can publish, how to write a paper, and as well as tips on submission. And so a lot of times students or their teachers ask, how can I take my science fair project or lab report and turn it into a manuscript that's suitable for publication? And we have all of that information here on our website. And you'll also find information on the publication pipeline that a paper will go through once it's submitted. So when students submit their paper to our journal, they get to participate in our unique mentoring process through the peer review system. All right, so to walk you through this, students with the help of a teacher or an adult mentor will submit the paper to our online publication portal. The paper will go through a pre-review process to ensure that the basic and bare minimum components are there, so that you have something like an introduction, a method section, a results section, things of that nature. And then an editor will review the manuscript for the general field or area of science and send that paper to 3 to 4 scientists in the same field. So, for example, if a student submits a paper dealing with astronomy, the editor will send it to 3 or 4 astronomers. So we have a huge network of graduate student and postdocs around the world who serve as reviewers and are trained to provide really helpful feedback to students. And so these reviewers are generally graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, or professional scientists. And I can tell you that they're very dedicated to mentoring and providing really constructive and helpful feedback to students about their science or about how they're communicating their science. The idea behind the peer review process is not to reject papers, but rather to help students to think more critically about their experiments and how they are constructing their conclusions, to guide students in perhaps more effective ways to communicate their science to a broad audience, and to really just be supportive and encouraging for these students, because ultimately we want these students to continue in science. And here is one of our amazing editors, Olivia Hoshing, who's actually on the call today. And she has this wonderful quote that she really values this opportunity to serve as an editor and provide authors feedback on their topic of interest. And she expresses this comment that's so prevalent with our editors and reviewers that we really do view it as a mentorship relationship where we're trying to encourage these students in their science. And just to further emphasize this mentorship, I wanted to provide this graphic that really shows all of the steps that go into a single student's paper. And all the time that we love to put into a student's paper to help them through this process. So it really adds up between the initial pre-review, the editing, the peer review. That paper that's submitted is actually a Word document, so students don't have to worry about formatting or anything. But then we have copy editors and proofing editors that take that Word document and turn it into a professional looking paper. So all of this adds up to about 25 hours of mentoring across 14 volunteers for every single paper that's submitted. And the paper itself that eventually gets published is something that students are really proud of, and it has a permanent website address. It's free, it's easily accessible for others to read and easy to share with other people. And it's something that students are just really proud of, and rightfully so. It's a huge accomplishment. And to have this professional product that they can share widely is something that's really great for students. So this is just an example of an article that was recently published. And you can see that these authors are actually from Istanbul, Turkey. So we also get authors from all over the world, and not just all over the world, but in all types of science. So the vast majority of students submit papers within kind of what we would loosely define as a biological field. But students also submit papers in fields of math, chemistry, health, sociology, physics, environmental science, engineering, psychology. It really runs the gamut. Since we've started in 2011, it's been almost 10 years. We had a bit of a slow start, but over the last 2 years, we've seen a huge increase in publications. And actually, this year alone, we have received a new submission from students every single day. And so we're really excited by the increase in submissions, and we are set to publish somewhere around, I think 130 manuscripts this year. And students come from all over the world, as I mentioned. And it's really just, our goal is to bring this program to any student as long as you're able to have access to a computer and can submit. We are willing to help and mentor students through this process. And I do want to just touch on the fact that students do find this meaningful. So we've surveyed some of our student authors in the past, and Ethan Savage is one of our past authors who is a 9th grader in New York. And he says that this experience was a great way to get prepared for a life pursuing science. And other students reflect his feelings as well. We survey each student author after publication, and students over and over express how this has been a meaningful experience for them. So just a few sample comments from student authors. So one student said that I'm excited about conducting future projects. Another one mentioned that this process taught them that science doesn't discriminate by age, and I love that because it shouldn't. And then finally, another student author said there are many different kinds of science and has made me more interested in discovering new things for myself. And so we're really hopeful that by engaging in this peer review process with other scientists around the world, that students start to really see the power of the scientific process and the community of scientists that exists, and the fact that we want to be helpful to young scientists. All right, so looking a little more broadly at our authorship, I'll summarize this briefly with 95% of our student authors agree that JEI has helped them think more critically about their research and, most importantly, help them view themselves as a scientist. And we honestly couldn't ask for anything more than this. And our teachers agree as well. So I know it looks like we might have some teachers on the call. Demetrius Green right here is one of the teachers who mentored a student through publication. And he told us that JEI provides opportunities for his students to experience a new and really rewarding sense of achievement. And then I do want to say, you know, there might be people on this call or who might watch later that maybe aren't super interested in publishing with JEI, but JEI isn't just about helping students publish their research. We're also about helping students engage in the scientific community through reading about science from their peers. And so I always tell my own students, so I teach first and second year college students, and I always tell them that there's no point in doing science if you don't share it with others, and there's no point in sharing it with others if others aren't going to read it. It's just pointless if no one's continuing this cycle. And so we also track how often our papers are read and who's reading them. And so on average, each of our papers receives 325 unique clicks within the first month of publication. And I promise you those clicks are not all from me. I love to read JEI articles, but I'm pretty sure I do not click on them that often. And our readership comes from all over the world. So this map shows where our readership is coming from. You can see a huge amount from the Northeast in the United States, but also across the entire world. And so this really goes to show kind of the broad platform that JEI provides to students in terms of sharing their work. So I only have a few slides left, but I just wanted to say a few things about other parts of JEI that might be of interest. So we really view science as this cycle of generating ideas, designing and executing, publishing research, socializing the findings to generate more ideas to continue the cycle. And JEI has resources to help students and teachers with all aspects of this cycle. They're all found on our website. They're all free. They're easily accessible. And it's our goal that we continue to build these resources to help students and teachers use kind of authentic primary scientific research to complement what is already being done in the classroom and the lab in the middle and high school setting. And so encourage you all to visit our website and explore the resources that are available. So for example, in terms of generating ideas, we have certainly our articles can be read by students to stimulate those ideas, but we also have some more structured guidance on how to use those articles, and that can be found in our resources. And again, if you're interested in publishing, we have all the information you need under the submit your own article or in the submit tab here. Okay. And we also have annotated articles to help students and teachers not only figure out how to turn their own research into a primary paper, but if you wanted to just explore what is a primary paper, how can we go about reading it and finding like the key parts of it. We have all of this again on our website and ready to be used. So I encourage everyone to visit our website. It's emerginginvestigators.org. And I will finish up by just thanking our sponsors, the National Science Foundation, the Richard Lounsbury Foundation, Alloy Therapeutics, and the New England Biolabs. And with that, I am happy to take absolutely any questions that you can throw my way.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Please, everyone, feel free to put your questions in the chat or just take yourselves off mute and fire away.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much. That was an excellent presentation. So my daughter's done, I'm a high school bio teacher, and I have 3 kids. And my oldest is now a sophomore who's been through the science fair and done some pretty great projects so far. Thinking about her and some other students, like how long, I guess, does this process generally take from start to finish?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will let Yamin or Olivia jump in if they want to, but I would say from the time of submission to actually going out for peer review to other scientists, if there are no issues, which hopefully there would not be, that would be, I would say like around 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Yamin, does this sound right? Okay, good, because I'm not in the day-to-day trenches anymore, so.
Yeah, from the it will take 3 or 4 days for the managing editor to assign the manuscript to the associate editor.
Okay.
And then 4 or several more days for the associate editor to find the reviewers. Then usually we give our reviewers 2 weeks or 3 weeks to finish the scientific review process. Then the associate editor will spend 1 more week to finish up the report. Then we give the report back to the student authors.
So it sounds like from submission to getting back the reviews from the reviewers could be anywhere between 5 and 6 weeks.
Right.
And then it's up to the student. So we try our best not to recommend changes to the actual like scientific method, like the method that the students do. We don't necessarily want them to redo an experiment because that is a lot of work. But if there are perhaps issues with the experimental design, the reviewers might suggest that the student kind of really rethink the conclusions and make sure that the conclusions match or are aligned with what the results are, considering any problems with the experimental design. And I would say in the past, that's probably been the biggest challenge, is that students submit papers that might have flaws in the experimental design. And so they really need to rethink what their conclusions actually mean, because we don't want them having to redo the entire experiment. And so there will be revisions. I think every paper is going to have some level of revisions to do. So however long that takes is really up to the student. And some students are really quick about getting the revisions back in a week or a few weeks. Other students, like we've had papers come back to us after a year, but we'll take them. And then at that point, it's a few more weeks of getting it through. There could be another like smaller round of revisions, and then it's just the copy editing. So our copy editors go through, they ask the student to just check and make sure that they're okay with all of the edits that the copy editor suggests. And then the proofing editor will go through and take that Word document and turn it into kind of that manuscript style that you'll see on our website. And again, we need the permission of the student, make sure, like checking off, making sure everything looks good. So that's another week at least. So it can take a while, but most of it's like this, a lot of just back and forth and making sure that the student approves, that the editor approves. So it can be a long process, but something that we're certainly aware of and trying to work through as well by bringing on additional editorial staff.
Thanks so much.
Hi, if I can ask a question, please. So I'm a middle and high school science teacher, and I have students that participate at science fair every year, and a lot of them are very enthusiastic. So I was just wondering if there were past projects, so I'm just wondering how old a project can be to be submitted. So if they've done a project within the last, 3 years, 2 years, does it have to be recent research, or can it have, a longer timeline? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that your question makes sense. Absolutely. Olivia, do you want to jump in? I know what I'm thinking. I just want to make sure it's what you're thinking.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be recent research. The student should definitely still have a connection to it so that they can dialogue with us about the revision, but it doesn't have to be a recent project at all. And we even have papers published by seniors in high school, and they'll finish the paper when they're actually going to college. We'll still publish that paper as long as they keep engaged in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would also like to add that when we review the papers, we don't focus on the novelty or significance. We just want to say if it's a hypothesis-driven research article. That's it.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, is that in terms of the types of papers that we're willing to accept, really we're willing to accept a lot. We don't judge based on how sophisticated the science is. I think I saw this on the website. We recently published a paper about the absorbency of paper towels. So that was a recent article. And so really it's just a matter of, are the students doing a research project that they themselves don't know the answer to, and that it is true inquiry for the students. That's really the most important part for us in terms of the types of papers.
I might have missed this earlier too. So the submission piece, are they submitting essentially their science fair research paper to you? And is there anything else that would need to be submitted, I guess?
Yeah, so it's from state to state. So like I'm in Georgia, and from state to state, we see differences in what is required for submitting to science fair. So in Georgia, we don't actually, they don't submit a paper. I don't know if it's different in Massachusetts, but we have guidelines in terms of how the paper should be structured for JEI, but I don't know specifically how different it is for something like what your students would submit for science fair. Certainly in Georgia, it would be very different because they don't have papers. So it's a matter of taking perhaps a lab report, like for students in Georgia, where I always work with them in terms of taking their lab reports that they may have done for their class in addition to science fair, and turning that into a paper. But I know, so if we think about like the science fair board, there's typically an introduction, a methods, results section, and some sort of conclusion section. And that really does map very well onto a scientific paper that a student would submit to JEI. It's a matter of like just going to the JEI website and looking at kind of like the nuances of the formatting, like the reference citation style might be different. And the methods will have to be written more in the narrative form than a student might write for a science fair. So.
Sorry, if I can ask another question, please. So when I do science fair with my students, and we do a lot of research on what has already been done in the field, and they do citations related to that. And I was just wondering how much, how do you require more, research, more resources on more primary research, which may be, a little bit beyond the middle school level? So how much, like, as they're doing their reviews, do you require them, to do more than they would do in their initial submission?
Olivia, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so for submission, we expect that the student has a couple of citations to show that they've done some reading and thought about their question and how to introduce it. During the review process, often the editors and the reviewers will suggest references that are accessible to the students so they can learn more about their topic. And usually that helps in improving their conclusions as well. So that's part of the dialogue between JEI and the students in order to improve the paper.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So, so once the student submit the paper based on the JEI requirement, how will the communication be? Is it through email, through Zoom, and is it going to be done after school or weekends? How does that work?
So this adult mentors, either the teacher or a parent or some sort of research mentor, actually submits a paper on the student's behalf. And the communication is through the editorial platform where the submission occurs, but then it's through like emails that are going to be sent to the mentor's email.
Okay.
And so all communication is through email, although we have started to implement Zoom office hours. So these happen occasionally, and it's an opportunity for students or teachers or mentors to log on to Zoom and just ask any question that they have. And those are we had some in early December. I think they'll probably be posted to our Facebook page and social media when the next office hours are. I know that we're trying to implement more Zoom interaction with students, but it would always be after school hours. We're very cognizant of when students are available and when they're not.
Okay. And I have a follow-up question. So when the student will log into Zoom, does the parent or the teacher mentor have to be with them during the Zoom, or can the student just access it by themselves?
I think for the Zoom office hours, it was anyone who signed up. And I'm not sure if we were really keeping track of whether it was a student author or the research mentor or teacher or parent.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right, so it looks like there's a question, do we publish engineering projects too? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have engineering projects. We really try to encourage the students that even with the engineering projects to have some sort of hypothesis that they're really working towards within the project.
Well, unless we don't have any more questions, I'll give a last call. I do know that this group will be more than happy to answer your questions if they come up afterwards. You're welcome to.
And actually, yeah, I'm gonna put my email in the chat if people want to email me. So happy to answer any questions after this as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for all the great questions that everybody asked. And I'm looking forward to seeing an onslaught of interesting projects being directed your way. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you also to Olivia and Yamin for your answers and your participation. We really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess everybody can find, go back to your website and look for any details to reinforce what you've heard today.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. And definitely be in touch if you have questions.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.